All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're basically becoming historical detectives. We're going to grab our magnifying glasses and tackle a huge old mystery. How on earth do we know what happened thousands and thousands of years ago?
So, this whole thing kicks off with a really simple question. And it's one I bet you've asked yourself before, maybe when you're in a museum looking at some ancient pot or reading about a civilization that just vanished.
Yeah, that question. This is the big one we're cracking today. It's the same thing a young girl named Rashida wondered about. And it might sound simple, but trust me, the answer takes us down a rabbit hole into a world of clues, evidence, and some serious detective work. Okay, so first rule of detective work, right? You've got to survey the scene. And for us, our crime scene is the past. So we're going to start by looking at a map to figure out where all this history actually went down. So here it is. Our scene is this huge subcontinent. I mean, think about it. Where people chose to live, what they could eat, how they even survived, all of it depended on these rivers, mountains, and plains. The geography itself, that's our very first clue.
So, where do we start looking for fingerprints? Well, let's start with the rivers. Take the Narmada River, for example. People were living on its banks for hundreds of thousands of years. And these weren't just random folks, they were pros. We're talking skilled gatherers who knew the forests like the back of their hand. They knew which roots and fruits to collect, what animals to hunt. They were total survival experts. Now, if we layer a timeline on top of our map, things get really interesting. Check this out. Go back about 8,000 years, and boom, the first crops like wheat and barley start popping up in the hills. Then jump forward to 4,700 years ago, and we get our first cities along the Indus River. Fast forward one more time to 2,500 years ago, and you've got these massive kingdoms like Magadha forming along the Ganga. It's amazing. You can literally watch civilization spread across the subcontinent step by step. Okay, so we've got the lay of the land, our scene is surveyed. Now it's time to get our hands dirty and start bagging some actual evidence. We're looking for the stuff people left behind, the physical, tangible clues that tell us about their lives.
So, one of the biggest sources of clues is ancient writing. And it basically comes in two flavors. You've got manuscripts, which were literally written by hand. Manu means hand in Latin, which is pretty cool. And then you have inscriptions, which were carved into hard surfaces, meant to stick around forever. Let's look at manuscripts first. Something like this one here, on a palm leaf. It's basically an ancient book. Now, the problem is they were written on super fragile stuff like leaves or bark. So yeah, a lot of them got eaten by insects or just crumbled away over time. But the ones that did survive, oh man, they're treasure troves, often found in old temples and monasteries. They tell us about everything: religious beliefs, medicine, science, even poetry.
Inscriptions, on the other hand, were the total opposite. They were built to last. I mean, they were carved right into stone or metal, so they weren't going anywhere. Think of them as public announcements. This one, for example, was made on the orders of a ruler named Ashoka. Kings loved these things. It was how they'd broadcast their orders or, brag about their big victories in battle for everybody to see for centuries to come. Okay, so written stuff is awesome, but there's a catch, right? It only tells part of the story. What about all the people who couldn't write? To really understand what life was like for everyday, ordinary folks, we've got to look at the things they left behind. And that's where artifacts come in. Archaeologists are constantly digging up things like this: tools, jewelry, coins. Look at this. On the left, we've got a pot from an ancient city that's about 4,700 years old. And on the right, a silver coin from 2,500 years ago. These aren't just objects, they're a direct link to the past. You can almost feel the connection. They tell us what people valued, what they cooked in, how they bought and sold things. It's incredible. All right, let's pause and take stock. We've got maps, timelines, fragile manuscripts, stone inscriptions, and everyday artifacts. That's a lot of evidence piling up. So, who are the detectives who actually put all these clues together? And this right here, this quote, it just nails it. So historians and archaeologists are like detectives who use all these sources like clues to find out about our pasts. It's perfect, isn't it? They are the detectives of the past. That's their job, to take every little clue and piece together the puzzle of what happened. So let's break down the team. First up, you've got the archaeologists. Think of them as the crime scene investigators, the CSI of history. They're the ones out in the field, literally digging in the dirt to uncover the physical evidence. The ruins of buildings, the tools people used, the pots they cooked in, and even animal bones that can tell us what was on the dinner menu. And then you have the historians. If archaeologists are the CSI, historians are the lead detectives back at the office. They take all that physical evidence the archaeologists dug up, combine it with the written clues from manuscripts and inscriptions, and they start to build a case. Their job is to interpret everything, to connect the dots and reconstruct the story of the past. Not just what happened, but the big question, why?
All right, this brings us to the final reveal. We've got our detectives, we've got our clues. So what's the verdict? What story do they tell? You might think it's one single, simple story of history, right? Well, the answer isn't quite so straightforward. And here's the kicker. The crucial takeaway is that there isn't just one past. It's actually more accurate to talk about pasts, plural. The source material really hammers this point home. The past was a totally different experience depending on who you were and where you stood in society. I mean, just think about it. The past for a king or queen, we know a ton about them because they had people writing down every single battle they won. But what about the past for a farmer or a hunter or a craftsperson? Most ordinary people didn't keep records. So for them, our only clues are the things they left behind, the pottery shards, the old tools. We only get a glimpse into their world. And that's so important to remember. History isn't some dusty, finished book sitting on a shelf. It's an active, ongoing investigation. So much of what we know is really the history of people who had the power and the resources to make a record of their lives. And that means there are just countless stories from regular, everyday people that are still out there, waiting to be found. Which leaves us with the final, and I think really fascinating question to chew on. If the records we have were mostly kept by the rich and powerful, whose stories are we missing? What mysteries from the lives of ordinary people are still buried under our feet, just waiting for the next generation of history detectives to come along and uncover them?